Good evening. Welcome to Bread, Boxes, and the Virus. I'm your host, Patrick Bennett, along with my co-host, Ilene Fins. Tonight, you'll hear a series of performances and speeches from our School of English and Humanities. Now, before we get to the conversation and the dialogue and performance tonight, I want to highlight that this is the School of English and Humanities School Week. And our school offers so much. We offer pathways in associate art concentrations, in art studio, history, English, and writing. And our faculty teach so many courses that contribute to the college. Those courses include classes in art, English, foreign language, my favorite, speech, of course, music, theater, religion, philosophy, and history. So as you can see, our school is diverse and we teach so many different students. Now, let's get to introducing our wonderful faculty panelists and people that have helped us create this wonderful performance tonight. So first, let me turn it to my co-host and introduce Ilene Fins.
Thank you, Patrick. My name's Ilene Fins. I am a theater instructor here at Midlands Technical College. I teach Introduction to Theater and Beginning Acting, which is Theater 105. Along with my colleagues in the English department, Kristi Castro and Demick. I'd like to pass it to them for a sec.
Hi, I'm Kristi Castro from the English department, and I teach all kinds of English classes, but one of my favorite is creative writing.
And hi, I'm Demick, also English department, teach mostly composition and creative writing.
And we also have joining us tonight our wonderful dean, Rhonda Grego. So Rhonda, you can introduce yourself.
Yeah, hi everybody. I'm from the English department originally. I spent some time as English department chair, and now I'm delighted to be dean of the School of English and Humanities, and the faculty and students doing all the great things that Patrick talked about. And I do want to say that Demick is also the editor of Stylus, our student literary magazine. So I want to mention that, and I'm just delighted to be here tonight. Thanks, Patrick.
And finally, I want to introduce Rob Gilmer, our tech guru, who will be over us looking at all of our technical stuff for tonight. So Rob.
Hi, I'm Rob Gilmer. I'm also the Humanities Department Chair, which theater and speech and a number of other programs are within. Additionally, I'm a history instructor here at Midlands Tech. And for tonight, I will mostly be the sort of tech support person and hopefully playing the video for y'all in just a minute of these really fantastic performances from our students and faculty.
And I'm Patrick Bennett. Once again, I am a public speaking instructor where I teach public speaking and sometimes interpersonal communication. And I am so excited to listen to these performances. But first, I want to kind of talk to my co-host, Ilene. Ilene, give us a little background on how these performances kind of came about.
You bet. I'm always looking for opportunities for my students to perform. Usually that would mean get on stage, but not during a pandemic. So once the Humanities department merged with the English department to create the School of English and Humanities, I thought, oh, I have more playmates. I can wrangle and get into my little, So I approached the creative writing faculty and said, hey, what about starting a writer performer organization where we meet on Zoom and students can write and we can have, it helps actors so much to read words aloud. And maybe we can create a performance. And Jared and Kristi, man, took the ball and really ran with it big time. We meet every Friday, even sometimes over holidays, we meet every Friday, very dedicated. Writing exercises, people who are writing stuff, just bring it. We get to read it aloud. I get to play. I'm a frustrated actor who's not getting to perform during this pandemic. So that's how it came about. And oh, amazing writers and performers we have in this group. So I'm really excited to be able to share this with everybody.
So in a few moments, what you're about to see is a mixture of creative writing, spoken word, and a taste of public speaking. So you'll hear a taste of informative speeches and you hear a taste of some special occasion speeches. So without further ado, I would like to introduce to you and present Bread, Boxes, and the Virus.
Bread in Boxes, written and performed by Boone. The sourdough bread from a Pinterest recipe sits on my counter beside the homemade jam I made last March. It reminds me of quiet, the quiet I feel today. I feel like we've lived in a world that's far too loud, and today we can rest in quiet. The quiet from the rain, the quiet outside my kitchen window, the quiet I sit with sour bread and jam. My room isn't as clean as I wish it would be when I turn on my computer. 12 Zoom boxes fit my screen. 12 Zoom boxes that fit my teacher, my classmates, and a video that doesn't quite look like me. A Zoom box inside a screen box inside my box house. When my class gets too loud, I can mute my speakers. I can turn off my camera and leave my room. I can take my bread and jam to my front porch because the computer box buzz is far too loud. But it's not just the box. Sometimes the bread is too loud too. It groans if it's not kneaded long enough. It doesn't care about the pain in your wrist. Perhaps bread and boxes are too loud in general. Perhaps this year is too loud in general. If it isn't too much to ask, could the next pandemic be a little quieter?
Can I speak to the manager? Written and performed by Carrie Hankinson. Your Honor, my name is Janelle Anderson, and I honestly can't tell you why I'm being charged with assault and battery today. Here's what happened. I went to my local coffee shop like I do every Tuesday at 8:23 a.m. and I ordered my medium vanilla latte with caramel syrup and 15 pumps of strawberry sauce. When the idiot of a barista gave me my order, it was in a large cup, Your Honor. He said we didn't have any medium cups and that they were only going to charge me for a medium coffee. This was despicable. I wanted a medium latte, a medium. I told the barista he needed to give me a refund and give me a coupon for a free drink next time I visited the coffee shop. Was I going to use a coupon a month after it expired? Probably, but that's besides the point. And you may ask, Janelle, why do you care so much about getting a large drink when you ordered a medium? That's an upgrade, right? Well, see, when I'm already an hour late to work, I pour my medium drink into my own coffee mug so it looks like I made the coffee at home. I can't pour a large coffee into my mug, and if I try to drink the rest of it, the coffee will burn my mouth, and I promise I would have sued that coffee shop. Did I hit the barista? I mean, yes. But in my defense, he tried to take the coffee back from me because they can't give me a refund and let me keep the latte. And may I add another thing? The manager came to the front of the coffee shop and told me to get out. That was just plain rude and disrespectful. I told the barista that I was going to get him and the manager fired. I didn't even get my latte because I got so mad and I threw it on the floor. Your Honor, in all honesty, the only person here that did anything wrong was that stupid barista. What do you mean I'm guilty? You know what? Let me speak to your manager. Thank you.
So I'd like to begin today by thanking the director, the chief of police, the deputy chief, watch commanders, and all of my fellow officers for attending today. 20 years is a long time to do anything. It's a long time, especially with police work, considering the nature of the job. All the ups, downs, the trials, some of the people you don't really want to deal with every day. But I want to tell the younger officers, don't blink, because it goes by in a heartbeat. You'll be up here before you know it. When I was 19 years old, I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. So I thought, why not join the Army? And that's what I did. I joined the Army and I wanted to serve the best I could. So I thought, what's the best way to serve the Army? And I thought, let's police the Army. That's a good idea. And I had no idea what that was actually going to entail. The Army offered me adventure. It offered me travel. Police work offered me experience with some ne'er-do-wells. It offered me a chance to help people. But what I never expected out of being a police officer after all of these years, I never expected to meet such amazing people. And I never expected to form the bonds, which can only be really described as a brotherhood. And that's what I'm going to miss the most. Now, you don't get to make it 20 years without somebody guiding you, without some kind of mentorship, without peers pushing you. For instance, I'd like to thank Captain Johnson. Captain Johnson, you taught me the value of accurate and precise paperwork. That taught me attention to detail. It helped me out in casework. It's helped me out testifying in court. And it's helped me in other avenues when I became the training officer, for instance, keeping everybody's records together. And I want to thank you for that. Officer Mack, you taught me that not everybody needs to be hammered. Sometimes you got to hug a person. Not literally, but sometimes you have to hug a person because even on their worst day, they're still people. So you taught me compassion, and I appreciate that. The Chief of Police, Major Wall, and all of you, everybody else who's helped me while I've been pursuing my degree. Thank you for helping me with the schedule and being flexible with me. Without your efforts, I probably would never have pursued higher education because it was too hard at the time, working 70, 80 hours, sometimes in a week, sometimes 2 weeks, but I would have used that as an excuse to continue not pursuing a degree. So where am I going to go from here? Well, being a police officer is all I really know how to do, but I don't want this to be the only thing that I ever was. So I intend to pursue a career in teaching. And I know the lessons and the skills that I've acquired over a 20-year career are really going to help me in this pursuit. Again, I want to thank all of you for being here today. Please be careful. Watch your 6, Unit 901. I'm out. Thank you.
This is the poem, The Best Queers Never Even Got Touched, after Adam Faulkner, by Emmett Glacius, performed by Emmett Glacius. And that's me. The point was to be the queer and kill the queer. Adam Faulkner. Yearning. To Adam Faulkner. When I first saw your title of your poem, I thought it would be about the pandemic, how the best queers never even got touched, the queers who could quarantine were not touched by other queers, that they were secluded to our closets, our pods, our bubbles, alone with no one like us to see or touch or feel, how we escaped to whispered phone calls, text messages sent after dark. Regret. To the queers who couldn't quarantine, with essential jobs, nurses, factory workers, grocery store clerks, who mask up every day to face the world so we, the good queers, the best queers, could hide from it all. I want to apologize. I am sorry. We sacrifice you to the virus so that people within certain tax brackets can hide, as we dream that someday it will be us, that one day we won't be the ones sacrificed, instead can hide and do the sacrificing, while turning a blind eye to the broken society we perpetuate. Denial. To those who deny privilege. I remember once, a time when I was carefree, blind to all the injustices, but when I awoke, I realized what a privilege it was to have been at all. In reality, there are people born into hopelessness, born into trauma, born into a life you couldn't imagine. The first step to help them is listen, but all you want to do is plug your ears, close your eyes, and pretend that you are asleep.
This is And For What by Casper Sullivan, read by Casper Sullivan. It's very hard to be good if there is no God, not for the lack of fear for retribution, but for the bitterness of being abandoned. The mother, the father. We crowd our keepers, and not only people, but plants suckle from their mother's son, and animals seek succor from their keepers. Cells caulk the cement of our fortifications, a perfunctory task performed out of fear.
It's all about the goat cheese, written and performed by Ilene Finns. January 24th, 2021. My dear friends, a mathematical equation for you. Food love equals Humboldt fog plus fig jam greater than or equal to pandemic bliss. Mathematical friends, no need to point out inaccuracies of notation. Why, you may ask, is it codified as pandemic bliss? Isn't Humboldt fog a damn fine goat cheese on its own with or without the fig jam? I ask you, what was food love bliss before the pandemic? Wasn't it also the simple things like a great pairing of two simple foods? Sure, but I counter that even though this cheese and this jam may have been thought of as delicious, and it may have been thought of as bliss, I bet money that the bliss would have been because it was shared with friends while sipping an exceptional Pinot while sitting in Napa or San Mateo or in the Upper West Side of Manhattan, anywhere other than at home, alone in one's sweatpants. January 5th, 2020 was the last time I flew into an airport from New York City. In any normal year, I would have made 3 more trips by now. These trips are not so much vacation to me, but a chance to be with my friends and eat foods I cannot get where I live and work. Okay, another bit of math for you. Travel plus food equals pre-pandemic joy. Yep, I had to codify that one too. As a Jewish Buddhist atheist, wrap your head around that one, my meditation practice helps me reflect on my present state of being. As I enter my 3rd year of mourning my mother's death, I add in the suffering of the planet and its inhabitants. Wait, it's not maudlin. It's the recognition of small little bits of joy. The snores of my dog, bits of wisdom from drag queens and their makeup and their nail polish choices and their merch. It's the recognition of all facets of my privileged life and trying to use a bit of it to lift others. It's still connecting with my New York family over the phone or FaceTime brunches and the occasional masked visits and walks with local friends. It's the commitment to keeping in contact with my remaining biological family members. Grief started this journey long before COVID put me into physical isolation. And while I wonder what it'll be like when I can travel again, I think it'll look a little bit like this. The amazingly soft and pillowy ravioli from that place on Arthur Avenue in the Bronx. And soup dumplings from LaSalle's on the West Side. A reminiscent tour of Seattle and my old neighborhoods with fish tacos and some Dungeness crabs. A bunraku performance in Kyoto, Japan. Followed by noodles, perhaps? Tapas in Spain with a view of the ocean. A sumptuous dinner at Commander's Palace in Nola with Adrian acting as mayor. And a view of the Aurora Borealis among the glaciers in Iceland. Being in it and among it and just taking it all in with friends beside me that I can hug and cry with and laugh with. And oh man, what a day that'll be. It is my hope that this list will expand. But for now, I stay in the here and now with goat cheese and jam and my dog and my sweatpants.
It was not made illegal until the year 2000. It is a multi-billion-dollar industry. It can happen anywhere, in Hollywood, in farms, beauty salons, and even religious institutions. All of these things that I stated are about the same subject, Human trafficking. Human trafficking, or modern-day slavery, is an issue affecting this world. Today, I will talk about what human trafficking is, how it happens, and show you how prevalent it is in today's society. I will begin by discussing what human trafficking is. Human trafficking is a crime and a human rights violation that comes in many forms. Human trafficking involves forcing, coercing, inducing, or someone to engage in commercial sexual activities, labor, or any other services. It can happen in both legal and illegal industries. Some examples include drug smuggling, domestic servitude, and child sex labor. There are two broad categories, forced labor and sex trafficking, with multiple forms falling under these two. So these two main categories help better classify the different types of human trafficking. The Panelists Project, a nonprofit organization that works to combat human trafficking, defines forced labor as the crime of using force, fraud, or coercion to induce another individual to work or provide service. And some forms of forced labor include domestic servitude, bonded labor, and being forced to work in farms, restaurants, and hotels. They also define sex trafficking as the crime of using force, fraud, or coercion to induce another individual to engage in commercial sexual activities. And some forms of sex trafficking include child sex trafficking, pornography, forced prostitution, and stripping. Now that I have discussed the two broad forms of human trafficking and their subgroups, I will now briefly explain how it occurs. This crime has no boundaries and can occur to anyone. The A&P model can be used to show how it happens. Human trafficking can happen to anyone. As the Department of Justice states, there is no single profile to a trafficking victim. It can happen regardless of your race, gender, sexual orientation, or socioeconomic status. Some people, however, are more vulnerable than others. Women, specifically Native American women and those who are undocumented, minors, the LGBTQ community, the disabled, and those of low socioeconomic statuses are at most risk for being trafficked. Human trafficking also does not involve the same patterns to get the victims. So these traffickers use different tactics and methods to get their victims. So some may groom their victims, form personal relationships with them, or buy them gifts. To better understand how this happens, we can utilize the A&P model. And the A&P model stands for action means purpose. And so this model can be used to show how human trafficking occurs. And so human trafficking occurs when a perpetrator, a trafficker, takes action and then employs the means for the purpose of using the victim for sex acts, labor, or any other services. To better understand how this model and human trafficking happens, we can apply the Jeffrey Epstein case. So as we all know, Jeffrey Epstein and his associate Ghislaine Maxwell, they recruited underage girls and forced them to engage in commercial sexual activities. And in order for a case to be classified as human trafficking, one requirement must at least be met from each column. I will now proceed to show how this issue is prevalent in today's society. Human trafficking is a worldwide issue that affects every nation. Over 25 million people are estimated to be victims annually. And this data comes from the 2017 International Labor Organization and Walk Free Foundation report. And this data is comprised of reported cases from about 90 countries. So these numbers could actually be larger. And out of all these victims, 64% of victims were trafficked into labor, 90% of victims were sexually exploited, 71% of victims were females, 29% of victims were males, 1 in 4 victims were children, and it was most prevalent in Africa, Asia, and Europe. Human trafficking also generates about $150 billion annually, so it is a big industry. And even though sexual exploitation accounts for a small percentage of victims, 66% of global profits are due to sexual exploitation. More specifically, in the United States, human trafficking occurs within our own borders. According to the Panelists Project, the United States, along with Mexico and the Philippines, was ranked one of the worst places for human trafficking in 2018. And the states with the most reported cases of human trafficking are California, Texas, and Florida. And this data comes from the National Human Trafficking Hotline in the United States Department of Health and Human Services. 50,000 victims are also trafficked into the United States annually. So these are victims coming from different parts of the world. And out of all the reported cases, 85% of victims trafficked are from here. So these are US citizens being trafficked. And most of this trafficking is largely based on sexual exploitation due to demand. As Joe Rogers, co-founder of the United States Institute Against Human Trafficking states, the United States is the #1 consumer of sex worldwide. This is evident in our music, television, and film industries. There is a high demand for sex. And in order for that demand to be met, there's going to be a supply needed to fulfill that demand. And that is why over 300,000 of America's youth is considered at risk for sexual exploitation. And the reason for this is because minors are easy to control. They're easy victims. And an estimated 199,000 incidents involving minors occurs every year here in the United States. As seen by the data presented, human trafficking is an issue that is prevalent in our society. Human trafficking, or modern-day slavery, is an issue affecting this world. Today, I have discussed what it is, how it occurs, and shown you its prevalence using data and statistics. Even though we may not know the full nature of the problem, these estimates and reported cases show that it is a worldwide issue. Multiple organizations like the National Human Trafficking Hotline, the Polaris Project, and task units from specific countries are all trying to combat this issue. Human trafficking is a crime that is hard to detect. Thus, we may never really know where it is occurring, who is being affected by it, or its true severity. Thank you.
This is the poem Word to the Walls by Castro Sullivan, performed by Emmett Clacius. A brick to every cell, a nail to every brick, a bed to every nail, a finger to every bed, a hand to every finger, an arm to every hand, a vein to every arm, a heart to every vein. Ba-dump, ga-thump, pa-dump, ba-dump, ga-thump, pa-dum. A mind to every chamber, a thought to every mind, a whale to every thought, a window to every whale, a cell to every window, a body to every cell, a heart to every body, a pulse to every heart. Ba-dum, ga-thump, pa-dump, ba-dum, pa-thump, ga-dump.
Drive by Emmett Clacius, read by Demick. Maybe we should just drive. It's raining and I need to be anywhere but here. Will you come with me? I never know where I'm going. Until I get there, getting lost with you is second nature. I wouldn't mind getting lost with you or in you. Will you take the wheel? I want to sit shotgun, close my eyes, feel the motion of the car while the calm of your voice envelopes me in warmth. I need cars to be safe again. There is this dream where I'm locked in a car that rolls in a lake. The water rises to my nose and I can't breathe. You call my name. Jerk me out of my trauma. You're crying, you say. Oh, I respond, wiping my face. I turn toward the window. Watch as raindrops roll across the starless sky.
This is The Girl by Emmett Clacius and read by Casper Sullivan. The girl is not fully attached to her body, which is not completely immersed in this world. She's convinced that there are parts of her missing from herself. It must have started from birth, she thinks. The girl's mother holding her to her chest as if she were just not rejected from her body. As if the girl was not forcibly pulled out through C-section just hours before, due to complications with her mother's anatomy. But this is just speculation. She remembers the first time it happened so clearly. She was 5 years old when suddenly the world sunk below her. Only she could see it. She did not have the language to describe what happened. So she stared blankly at the changed world, tears streaming down her chubby cheeks, her mouth not releasing a sound. The girl is not fully attached to her body, which is not completely immersed in this world. Mirrors have always eluded her. The girl can stare into them for hours. She could never quite grasp who was staring back at her. Why do they look so lost, she would think? Why do they look like a dream, hazy and far away? The girl is always floating 3 inches off the ground, tethered to this earth with only a thin twine, like a red helium balloon. She has forgotten what it's like to touch the ground. The girl is not fully immersed in this world, not fully attached to her body, which is not completely immersed in this world.
With Anguish by Casper Sullivan, performed by Ilene Finns. Does happiness age you faster than misery? When you spend an hour at the DMV, each second translates into a century. If I blink while smiling into the mirror, will wrinkles appear? If I laugh with him beside me hard enough that my eyes squint shut, will he be gone? Please, don't. The Notorious Burglar, Time. I await the day it climbs the portcullis and in through my window to purloin these precious things. With anguish, holding every moment in stasis with these tremulous hands, with strength that could never compare.
I want you to close your eyes and think of the beach. You feel the ocean breeze on your skin. You smell the salty air. Feel the sand on your toes. Now, I want you to imagine that you're standing on shore and you're looking out at the great blue expanse that is the ocean. Do you see the sun glittering on the waves? Okay, you can open your eyes now. It's beautiful, isn't it? Despite its beauty, however, the ocean has a dangerous side. I'm not talking sharks necessarily, but rip currents. Rip currents are unfortunately far too common and can be deadly if you're not prepared. So, to prepare you, I'm going to tell you the difference between rip currents and undertows, 3 myths about rip currents, and how to spot and how to escape from a rip current. The information in this speech comes from the website NOAA Side Jinx All About Weather, this California Sea Grant website, and Ocean Today's website, Rip Current Survival Guide. Okay, I want to clear something up first. Rip currents are often confused with undertows, but the reality is, undertows occur when waves pull your feet along with the sand, and they're short-lived, so you don't really need to worry about those. Rip currents, on the other hand, are strong currents on the surface, and they are very powerful and can pull you away from shore quickly. So, now that that's been cleared up, that brings me to my next point. You've probably heard many things about rip currents, but some of these things may be myths. So here are 3 myths about rip currents, debunked. Myth number 1. rip currents pull you under. Well, rip currents are actually a current on the surface, so it won't pull you under like an undertow. Myth number 2. If you get caught in a rip current, you'll be swept out to sea forever. Well, maybe a long swim, but if you're caught in a rip current, you're unlikely to be swept out to the middle of the sea. Most rip currents travel in a circuit, so if you ride it, it'll eventually bring you back closer to shore by a weaker current. Myth number 3. If you don't see a rip current, you don't have to worry about it. Well, that's not exactly true, because the constant motion of the ocean, the rip currents can occur spontaneously, which can take you by surprise. So, seeing as rip currents are unexpected and dangerous, it is important to know how to spot them, and so I'm going to tell you how. First, you want to get to an elevated position so you can see it better. Look for any flat between the breaking of the waves, and also see if you can find lines of water that's carrying murky seaweed, foam, sand away from shore. And you should also probably take notes of the flags that the lifeguards put up. And a word of warning, if you see big waves, or if it's low tide, you're more likely to encounter strong rip currents, so be aware of that. But if worst comes to worst, and you're stuck in a rip current, it's important to know how to get out. First, it is imperative that you do not panic. Panicking and trying to swim against the current will tire you out, and you can very likely drown. So that's step 1, do not panic. Step 2, wave and yell to get attention of the other people around you, to let them know that you're in distress. Step 3, swim parallel to the current, and once you're out, swim diagonal to the shore. To help you remember these steps, here's a little rhyme. Wave, yell, swim parallel. And also remember, don't panic. Now that you know about the difference between rip currents and undertows, 3 myths about rip currents, and how to spot and how to escape from rip currents. For more information, you can visit NOAA Scijenk's All About Weather website, California Sea Grant's information about rip currents, and the Ocean Today website. Remember, the most important thing to do if you're caught in a rip current is to not panic. And remember the rhyme, wave, yell, swim parallel. Thank you.
Toilet paper, written and performed by Boone. The funniest thing about the pandemic that we don't discuss, and the future whose attention is not directed at enough, is the toilet paper. Yes, as ridiculous as it may, our toilet paper crisis reflected the best and worst we can be. From the people who traveled to buy $1,000 worth and now are stuck with 1,500 rolls left over, to the people who bought just enough and gave some to their neighbors who only had 1 roll left. Did you see anyone get in a fist fight at Walmart for the last package? Or upsell 1 ply for $15 a roll? Or did you invest in a bidet to be environmentally conscious? Were you already prepared for the shortage? I always thought myself too mature to measure humanity in toilet paper, but I suppose it's a start.
2019 was a really dumb year for me.
A lot.
Bad stuff.
And
I was determined to make this year a great one to try to salvage whatever shred of sanity I had left.
I remember back in December when my boyfriend started showing me the news updates about the coronavirus. My first thought was, oh, this will blow over soon. You just wash your hands. You'll be fine.
I started freaking out when they started canceling sporting events because that's a big deal for Americans.
I didn't qualify for a stimulus check.
I am an introvert and suffer from social anxiety, so I'm usually a homebody anyway. However, this is even a little bit much for me.
It's been a month since we've seen our peers.
And our instructors teach us face to face.
Been a month since we've been out to eat.
Gone to the movies.
Gone to the gym.
We've seen our close friends.
The little things
that we took for granted are gone in an instant.
At the start of this outbreak, I was sure not much was going to happen for me in my life. I was wrong.
As human beings, we all desire connection with some parts of the world.
Miss the Midlands Tech campus. I miss being able to interact with my classmates, walking to my classes, even stopping by the subway when I got out of class.
The boredom has been challenging. I need to stay on top of my classwork. This is also challenging because I'm not a technical person. Computers are not my strength. I was scared to set up my Zoom lectures, but I pushed through.
When my responsibilities were narrowed down to only school, I had all the time in the world to do my work, which was great at first until I realized I was putting the same amount of pressure on myself to focus on school all of the time.
This is my last semester at Midlands, and
I would have never imagined spending it like this.
I went from working around 20 hours a week
and being a full-time student
to nothing.
I desperately needed a schedule to keep me focused and on track of my goals. To no more waking up at noon.
And spending the day playing Dragon Age Inquisition, I was to wake up and get straight to work.
The first few weeks were really hard. I had to make another routine for myself.
My depression kicked in since I lost my job and my freshman year at college.
Ironically, I feel that the pandemic that literally separated us brought us together.
I appreciate the discussion boards in nearly all my classes now, as they forced me to feel like a real student.
My main concern was not having Wi-Fi at home. I know that sounds very odd, but I have survived without it for several years.
My house is surrounded by trees, so I could never find an adequate internet provider.
My solution for that used to be going to the school library or the public library.
Unfortunately, that was not an option when everybody shut down. I tackled this by sitting in the parking lots and doing everything in my car. I was miserable at first.
Schoolwork in a house full of people is a nightmare.
All of us on our already very thinly stretched Wi-Fi.
Accomplishing schoolwork is a little difficult to do when a person lives in a house full of people.
There is no place in the house that is quiet.
The kitchen has someone cleaning and playing music.
The living room has been turned into an office for mom and classroom for the youngest sibling.
During this amazingly hard time, I have been completely quarantined because of my health conditions.
I have moved into my grandparents' house to help take care of them during this time.
Life during the pandemic has been utter chaos.
Overnight, I had become a full-time teacher to my 2 children.
I have a newfound understanding of just how much teachers do for our children.
Being able to get a few extra hours of sleep has been nice. Didn't realize how few hours I was getting.
I've watched way too much Netflix.
I watched Tiger King about 10 times. Truly grateful to be alive to witness a train wreck that is Joe Exotic and his sweet mullet. It's made me appreciate the fact that I'm confined to my house instead of a jail cell like Mr. Exotic.
I've learned so much about myself within the past few weeks. At first, I was eating so many quarantine snacks and staying up until I heard the birds chirp.
Started waking up at 8 a.m. and running 2 miles. I'm doing 3 miles next week, and I'm eating a lot healthier.
I've definitely been better at self-care since the pandemic started. I've had time to read books that I've been putting off reading.
On the positive side of things, I've gone back to playing the piano. After this whole thing is over, I plan to find time to keep playing.
Again, this is only the beginning. People are dying.
Look around and what do you see? People in masks looking at me. Don't you dare cough or sneeze because people may think you have the disease.
It's hard to focus on your math homework when every day you're checking news to see what the updates are on the death toll.
Watching the world through my tiny little screen, wanting to do something, maybe I'll clean. I sit there and ponder, maybe I should take a nap, but maybe, just maybe, I want another snack.
I work in healthcare. When the virus began to break out, I was working 12-hour shifts from either 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. or 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. 7 days in a row. I found myself struggling to do assignments.
When the pandemic is over, I feel that people will try to leave their homes as soon as possible. It's hard for me to see life after the quarantine, to be honest.
We never took the precautions as seriously as other countries, and now it feels like we're just jumping right back into restaurants and gyms.
Maybe once a vaccine is created, things will go back to normal. But for now, I don't see that happening. What is going to happen tomorrow? In a week? Will we ever be back to normal? I'm ready for the uncertainty to end.
I'm not sure when things will get back to normal, but I know one thing. It will never be normal again. I'm in no rush to get back to regular life because of everything going on around us. I can't wait to go out to eat.
I try not to think about the COVID-19 issues because my mother is a police officer and my older sister is a nurse. Both go to work every day, and the fear of something happening to them frightens me senseless. I haven't really left my home since March 12th, and I'm getting bored.
It's not really the same seeing a friend over FaceTime or Zoom than in person.
The virus started off as a simple spring break extension, in my mind. At the time, I did not understand the full scope of the situation.
I wish I would have hugged my grandparents more before this. Extremely close with them, and I'll definitely be giving them extra hugs once this is all over.
I have a feeling that what we are experiencing now will be a defining moment for the rest of our lives.
As someone who has lived through and retained memories of 9/11, the housing crisis of 2008, and several other large, impactful moments, I know how important it is to remember aspects of life now because my future children will one day ask me, what was it like living during a pandemic?
How will I answer that? Will I be completely truthful? Or will I try to paint it yellow in the hopes that I come across as strong and resilient?
So we are doing all right as of now, but it is still work in progress.
Time slows down, your body goes numb, color fades away, and no one seems real. This is what a person suffering from depersonalization or derealization disorder experiences. As college students, we all have our own levels of anxiety, but this is a whole different experience. Today, I want to tell you about my uncommon anxiety disorder, and I'm going to tell you what the disorder is, some causes and effects, how common it is, and how it affects me personally. First, we must understand what the disorder is. It is a mental state where you feel detached from reality. According to the Mayo Clinic, people, objects, and other surroundings do not seem real, and some symptoms include surroundings appearing 2D, there's a heightened clarity of your surroundings, seeming almost perfect, the current moment seems like the past, and in some cases, people feel like their reality or people around them are colorless and distorted. To paint a clear picture, it would feel like you're either in a movie or you're watching yourself in a movie. There are different reasons why people experience this. Most people experience it briefly due to an anxiety attack, stress, or trauma such as a car crash or an injury. And naturally, your body does this to protect you from going into shock. But people with the disorder, like myself, we experience it randomly for no reason, and we have no way of regulating that. And now we know what the disorder is, but what's the difference? So there is a general term, dissociation, and the more specific terms, depersonalization and derealization. The medical news today says dissociation is a general term that refers to a detachment from many things. Depersonalization is specifically a sense of detachment from oneself and one's identity. Derealization is when things or people around you seem unreal. So to put it simply, depersonalization makes you feel unreal, derealization makes your environment seem unreal, and dissociation is an umbrella term for the two. And what are some cause and effects? So usually, like I said, it's caused by intense trauma or a traumatic experience. Most people will experience it briefly because something like a car crash or an injury or seeing something traumatic. But people who experience longitudinal trauma, such as child abuse or trauma over a long period of time, they lose their ability to regulate the body's natural response to stress. According to the Walden University, trauma impairs the normal development of the brain and nervous system, the immune system, and the body's stress response systems. Experiencing it briefly is common, but the disorder itself is very uncommon. According to the Cleveland Clinic, transient depersonalization and derealization is quite common. The situation occurs when you experience depersonalization symptoms briefly, but for the actual disorder itself, the article states that it occurs in less than 2% of the population. And how it affects me personally, I found out I had this disorder when I was 15. I remember experiencing it for the very first time. I was 15, I was in my high school chorus class, and everything went completely colorless and numb. And I couldn't quite understand where I was or who the people were around me. And it was very frightening to not recognize a single one of my classmates' faces. So I tried to ignore it. I tried to go about my day, and it wasn't something I could ignore. So this went on for a couple days, and I decided to address it with the school counselor. And I explained to her that I couldn't recognize anyone or feel anything. So I sought medical help, and I found out that I do have depersonalization derealization disorder. And personally, it does affect my everyday life. You know, you can space out and go numb while driving, during a class, talking to professors, walking to class. It can happen at any time, but it's really about the coping mechanisms and grounding yourself that's important. And at 15, it was very scary. I remember staying home from school weeks at a time, being really afraid to go outside. But now, as a fully functional 18-year-old in college, I'm proud to say that I have learned my grounding skills and my coping skills, and I have learned to work my way around it. And personally, I don't see it as an obstacle. I see it as a superpower. I can zone out and tune anyone out at any time that I want. And in a way, it kind of helps my productivity because I can zone out the things that aren't important and focus on my schoolwork and what is important. So honestly, some people see it as a curse. I see it as a blessing. I wouldn't have it any other way. And I think it makes me a stronger individual having experienced this and having to continue experiencing this. And before today, I can bet most of you did not know what depersonalization was. And I know we covered a lot, but I hope you all now know a good bit about what the disorder is, what it feels like, some causes and effects, and a little bit about how it affects me. And even though it may seem like a barrier to a normal life, like I said before, it's my greatest superpower.
I want to thank all of our student performers. So let's give them a round of applause virtually for all of our panelists. That was great. That was excellent. So in our remaining time that we have left, we have a couple of the student panelists present right now. So I'm going to ask some questions, and Ilene is going to ask some questions as well. And if you have any questions in the audience, feel free to drop it in the Q&A, and we will answer those questions. We've got about 10 or so minutes in regards for questions. So I'm going to start out with Yasmin, who is actually one of my wonderful students. And I want to ask a question about your speech. Yasmin, I want to thank you once again, such a great speech.
Thank you.
But I want to ask you, when you kind of mentioned in your speech that you use this superpower that you have, can you give an example, like recently, when you kind of used it to your benefit?
Well, being in your public speaking class, it requires me to get up in front of a crowd. And even right now, actually, I'm kind of in front of a crowd. And when it decides to come over me, it's sort of like, you know, when you're afraid to give a speech or afraid to do a performance and everyone says, oh, don't worry about the audience's faces. Well, I don't actually have to worry about that. So, you know, it's amazing sometimes because all I can focus on is what I'm doing currently.
And I think more people in public speaking and just in theater and all other performance will
yeah.
have that skill. Does anybody else have a question for Yasmin before we move on to our another two student panelists? Anyone have a question about her speech?
I just want to say thank you for sharing that. That was really an amazing story and rather inspirational.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I think turning your everyday obstacles or challenges, because we all face them, turning it into something positive and empowering yourself is super, super important, especially right now when all of our minds are going crazy. So most definitely.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Thank you, Yasmin. If we have any other questions, just hold on for a second. We have any more questions that come in the chat. But Ilene, could you kind of speak to our wonderful panelists we have from your performance group and kind of give some insight on their performances and speeches?
I would love for Casper, Ray, and Carrie to not only introduce yourselves and your major, a little bit about you, but maybe to talk a bit about maybe some process, inspiration. Casper?
Yeah, hi, I'm Casper Sullivan. I am actually a writing major, so that's why my writing was in this. As for the process, you know, I don't know about everybody else here, but I just feel like this pandemic has changed the way that I write, like changed what makes me want to write. I think that when I write now, it's more about like the moment, like feeling things in the moment. And I think maybe part of that is because we've been so trapped with ourselves during this quarantine.
I can understand that, right? A way to get something out. Yeah, I get that for sure. Yeah, thank you. Ray, how about you?
I'm Ray. I'm an associates in art student, and this is my last semester here at Midlands. And I've been part of the Creative Writing Club and Performers Club since it started. And I think a lot of like the inspiration for my writing has been just like the group dynamic that we have, both in the club and then also taking a creative writing class, and just how we're able to bounce ideas off each other. And I think one major thing that I realized in my writing is words don't have to mean words necessarily. So that's just been one concept that's been really fun to play with.
Thank you. Thank you. That club is amazing, I have to say. And the way you all give each other feedback and inspire is a really powerful thing for me as a teacher to witness. Carrie, how about you?
Hi, I'm Carrie. I'm a studio art major at Midlands Tech, and I joined the Writer/Performance Club about 2 months ago. And in high school, I was in my drama club, and I emailed Professor Fins and asked if there was any kind of drama club going on at the school, and she told me about the writing club. So I joined that, and I've always wrote stuff, books, monologues. And so I had a lot of fun with that. It made me feel awkward because I was like, I was the only one that did something really comedic, except Professor Finn in the performance. And so, but yeah, this pandemic has just got me to think a lot about writing and like how to change it, because a lot of stuff can impact your everyday life. And so, yeah. That's it.
Great, thank you. Laughter is super important, right? Best medicine and all that. So it is very important to laugh.
We have a couple questions in the chat, but I forgot to ask Yasmin to introduce herself. So Yasmin, you can introduce yourself, and then I want to ask you a question that's in the Q&A.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm Yasmin. I'm a criminal justice major here at Midlands. And I guess I'll address one of the comments.
So Yasmin, the question was, is this something you can control, turn on or off?
It's case by case, honestly. It really is. I wish I had a concrete answer, but it really just depends on the time that it happens.
Question. Oh, sorry, I was muted. Question for everyone, or I think more for the performers. Do you think the pandemic has increased your creativity or dampened it? Do you think your creativity has increased or dampened because of the pandemic?
I would say both in a sense. I think one thing that the pandemic did, especially earlier on, is it forced us to have to rely on ourselves and being alone, and then kind of gave us an outlet. Like it was easier to be more intentional about taking time to write. But at the same time, like things are so hard for everyone. I think we were very idealistic, like collectively, that early quarantine last March, we're going to go do this and we're going to start a workout routine and we're going to bake every day and finally meet all these goals. However, realistically, we were all very depressed. So yes and no.
I would agree with Ray. I think it has both made my process easier and made it more difficult. It just depends on like what day it is and what's in my mind. There are times during this, like there's just so much going on and so much you have in your head that I can't get like a single word down on the page. But at the same time, like I've joined this group since then, and I've started writing on a regular basis, more than I have in my entire life, probably. So
I would say the pandemic has also forced theater artists to be a little bit more creative. You know, I mean, the amount of gear I've bought just to do this, or learning how to self-record, things that I just haven't done in a long time because I'm not a working actor anymore like I used to be. So there's been an opportunity for creativity, try to express something, because missing the live audience aspect for sure.
So there's another question from our wonderful dean. Out of the other activities you took up during the pandemic, what stuck and what did not? So what other activities that you tried and you said, don't want to do that anymore? What are some things that actually stuck?
I feel like more than activities, it's been just like small fixations, like books and shows and stuff. I'm just picking them up and putting them down, seemingly at random. Doesn't matter how like into them I am. If I just suddenly feel like I don't want to continue them anymore, I just never pick them up again. I don't know if that's the same for anybody else, but
I agree with Casper on that. I was never someone who would get like fixated on one particular thing for a short time, but I definitely have been. Like I had a very weird baking phase, and now I'm just like, I don't want to bake at all anymore. I had a very weird like gardening phase. I think a lot of people went through that just because we were so isolated for so long, and then everyone was online all the time. So you just follow all these trends because you're alone and that's what you do. But then you get bored. So you move on.
I started watching tap dance videos thinking my tap was really going to take off, but it was really hard. And I kind of gave that up, but it made me laugh, which then led me to watching all the seasons of every format of RuPaul's Drag Race, and not only following drag queens, but buying all of their makeup and clothing and merchandise, and just basically obsessed. I even joined Instagram, which I never had before, just in order to follow drag queens, and posted a picture of my 27-year-old self as the succubus from the Vampire Lesbians of Sodom that I did at Trustis Theater back in 1990, where the makeup on my face was actually applied by some of the drag queens in the play.
So we didn't ask you, Professor Fins, about your inspiration from your performance from earlier today. We asked everybody else, but we didn't ask you about.
Well, you know, every week I would say, I'm just here to read. I'm just here to read. And then Ray posed a challenge one week. When do we get to hear your writing, Ilene? And I thought, I'm not a writer, but okay. And, you know, like everyone else, I was, I don't know, not like everyone. I was depressed and sad in January. And I was just laying on my couch, and it just came to me sort of in this format. I love watching CBS Sunday Morning, and they always have a commentary of somebody, and it looks like, dear viewer, blah, 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 you know, talking to somebody. And so that was sort of the format I was going for. And just thinking about all the things, you know, I miss travel. I travel a lot and I eat a lot. And yeah, so that's sort of what my inspiration was.
So we got time for 2 more questions that are in the Q&A. So I want to ask this to everyone, and anyone can jump in. So the first question is, do you see yourselves continue to write after the pandemic?
Yes, definitely. I think I'm going to be writing way more than I did before. I definitely want to use like the inspiration from right now, both just with everything going on in the world, and then also the Creative Writing Club to keep my writing going after Midlands Tech.
Anyone else have any thoughts on that? I know, Yasmin, you're in public speaking, but I know you have a creative side as well. I know you're a performer a little bit too as well. So hopefully we'll get to see your performances one of these days. But lastly, last question for everyone. The pandemic will surely be remembered forever by all of us. How do you see it coming through in your various creative outlets in the years to come? So how do you see it coming in your various creative outlets?
That's an interesting question, because I don't know. I feel like there's a lot to this whole situation that we've taken in and we've processed fully, but there's a lot that I think has probably affected us unconsciously. And so it's kind of interesting. It's almost like we're waiting for this time capsule. Like we're waiting to dig up this time capsule and see like exactly what has influenced the writers during this time, and if there's any like visible, almost like if there's any sort of like genre defining qualities to it, you know? So
right.
We actually brought it up in the club. We were talking about if we think there's going to be like pandemic movies, pandemic books, TV shows, music. And I personally said I didn't want there to be. I like what Casper said about having subconscious things, maybe some underlying plots, but I don't know. As of right now, I think it'd probably be better if we just had just undertones of the pandemic and then just moved on once this is eventually over.
Any other thoughts on that last, Ilene?
Yeah, just waiting for theaters to reopen, right? But that's really up to probably the general populace to get a vaccine. Percentage-wise, I think, for theaters to reopen. I know that Broadway is reopening in December, I think. Our local theaters are trying, and but it feels real far away. It just feels very, very far away right now, and I'm anxious to get back, and I'm also scared because it seems like it's been a long time.
Rhonda, did you have something you want to add to that question?
Yeah, I'm an amateur photographer, and completely, let me stress the word amateur there. But I did notice during the pandemic, I had a hard time figuring out like my normal things that the part of my brain that likes taking photographs. I had a hard time figuring out what I wanted to look at and what I wanted to take pictures of and what mattered. I don't know. I felt like I still feel I'm in a recalibration in a way. And I feel like I feel like that's maybe what we're going to be in for a while, a kind of recalibration of a lot of things in life. But that's what I noticed. Which is very odd for me because I've never had trouble accessing that part of my brain that likes looking and taking photographs. But I had moments where I had trouble doing that during the pandemic. So I'm looking forward to coming out of that or recalibrating in whatever way my brain needs to recalibrate.
Rob, did you want to add something in before we wrap up?
Yeah, just kind of going off of what everybody said. My suspicion, and I don't know if this is a proper as a historian for me to be sort of projecting into the future here, but I would think what's more likely, hopefully, to happen is rather than being like COVID-19 movies or books, and which I'm sure there'll be tons of that too, is a lot of the themes like y'all have been writing about, isolation, anxiety. What does community mean? What is, and it sounds kind of cliche almost to say, but what is the meaning of our lives? What are we here to be doing? We've all had a year that's unlike any other year we've had before, that's given us and forced us to have that time of kind of reflection on these things. And I think so far without real clear answers either. And so if anything to be, to think about what might come out of this creatively is, I think, an exploration of a lot of those kinds of themes over, probably the next decades. Because we're all shaped, like y'all said, in kind of unconscious ways by all this. So
I think the pandemic is going to linger with us for many, many years, and there'll be creative responses such as we had today to it. But I want to thank all of my panelists, all the panelists that have been here today. Y'all were excellent, great speeches, great spoken word, great poetry, and great responses. Had a great dialogue. Before I let everyone go, I just want to remind everyone of the School of English Humanities week, what we got coming up soon, especially tomorrow. So I want to show a slide right quick that gives you an idea of what is coming up. So tomorrow we're going to have an art break with Casey Klein, so you can go ahead and register on that Zoom. But tomorrow on Facebook Live, we're going to talk about our pandemic prism. So some of the similar themes that we've talked about today, we'll have faculty talk about their experiences during the pandemic on Facebook Live. So please join us there. But on Friday is the wrap up, the main event, in some way say, our virtual conference for the English and Humanities Student Conference. Some of our panelists will be there as well, have great poems, have great speeches that will be occurring on Friday as well. And please donate to the School of English Humanities Cares for those MTC students with emergency funds and issues. So please be on the lookout for some more events from the School of English Humanities that is coming up this week. So once again, I want to thank everyone for joining us for Bread, Boxes, and the Virus. You've been a great audience. I hope y'all have a wonderful evening. And like I said, this has been Bread, Boxes, and the Virus. Good night.